Well, hello, my legends. We've been through the most turbulent weekend ever. Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we did a 180 at 100 miles an hour. And the question is, where do we go next? Was it just a flash in the pan or was it real? We have the legends here with us. CTO is otherwise tied up in a basement somewhere, but Mando's here. Mando's drinking something bubbly. And Marty is here too. How are you, Mando?
I'm doing great, man. We were just talking about what a weekend it was. I was kind of settling in for like a multi-month chop, and then which we may still be on for, but it does feel nice that we've got some volatility back. I kind of just felt like it was going to be one of those ones where you just sit there and it just bleeds and everyone loses interest. But it feels like we're going to have some interest for a while.
We talk about fuses that were lit. Oh my goodness, Marty, what did you see this weekend? You watching?
Yeah, it was a wonderful weekend. I was sitting there on the space yesterday with the guys and looking at Truth Social, and saw the Trump post, put it on X, and then literally watched the candle in real time. And I mean, it was the biggest candle we've seen in a long time. I'd say
ever,
maybe the third biggest, ever, proportionately. And then a lot of information came out regarding the strategic crypto. We'll talk about it. And the importance and why they chose those ones. I have my theories. I think it's going to be a great show. Nice to see you guys.
Yeah, I got some theories on that too. Who's in the mix and why? And it's, the old expression is it's not what you know, it's who you know. But we're back. The three of us. Are we back? Are the markets back? Did somebody light up the alt season? Let's get into that too. So we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Obviously, we have to talk about what happened at the weekend. Some news that may have flown under the radar, like Bitcoin's 2% addition to their $150 billion optimal portfolio allocation, which I thought was huge. Macro, everybody's worried about macro, what's happening with Doge and the economy and China and Europe. Lots of crazy macro stuff we do have to touch on. Bitcoin reserves, what's happening on a state level basis, what's happening around the world. Could this be global FOMO into game theory of Bitcoin and other assets? We'll talk about one chain that does 90%, some nothing burgers around unlocks, and XRP flipping ETH. Mando will talk about that, and as well some SEC stance changes, which took me by surprise, and why China will print, and we are heading into some global liquidity spiking, which is good for us. So, ready to get into it?
Yes, let's go.
Let's talk about this. Marty, you hinted at it. We actually had a technical God candle. If you measure the candle from bottom to top in the space of 6 hours, it went up exactly $10,050 measured on Coinbase. Okay. It was 85,050 that morning, and it shot to 95K. And that was incredible. That got attention of the world, I believe. I haven't had time to look at all the major wallets and see what their activities are doing. But if this some type of crypto strategic reserve happens, I hope it's heavy Bitcoin, first of all, not a bunch of other stuff. We'll get into that in a second too. But game theory at work.
A couple things that were interesting is that, first of all, you saw the way Trump first posted about strategic crypto reserve. And then obviously everyone was like, but what about Bitcoin and Ethereum? And then there was that sort of a lag on Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then he kind of rebutted and put a comment, oh, but I also love Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then they popped up. But what that did was it created a really nice gap in the liquidation levels on Bitcoin, that between 85 and 88, that is now literally zero longs in that hole. And I believe that hole will be protected. So I think our new floor on Bitcoin is 88,000 from that. And that's some technical stuff that you have to be aware of. But I can show you. You can see it on my screen here. You can see that gap there. You see where there's no lines in Bitcoin there?
Yep.
That's what I'm talking about. But that was definitely a bull market verification candle, showing you that you're being shaken out. At any second, people are going to come straight back from stables into crypto. They're just waiting for the signal. It could be this week. Friday is probably the biggest crypto bullish event in history. Obviously, Bitcoin will be mentioned, but I mean, this crypto strategic reserve and why it's important and why it's coming. There's a lot of argument. All I see today on X is people arguing. Bitcoin only. Crypto should be in the fund. Why is crypto in the fund? Blah, blah, and we'll talk about that. But technically, I think we broke the trend. We have a new trend. We're going up.
Yeah. Speaking of breaking things, thank you for that, Marty. Mando, as a TradFi market guy, you saw people literally capitulate at the bottom. This is what markets are designed to do, to smash your head. I did a survey on Sunday, asking, over 5,000 people responded. 10% sold the bottom. They got out of crypto. They couldn't take it anymore. They thought the bull market was over. And can you explain to the audience here how not to get shaken out and why markets actually break your brain? That's what they're designed to do.
Yeah, it's something that I think I learned first cycle is that even when, let's say, you're losing money on an altcoin, or you're losing money on something that you no longer believe in, it's often easier to go back into Bitcoin than it is into stables. Like you kind of want to stay invested, because if you have too much money in stables, you tend to FOMO back in at terrible times. And often, even on these bounces like we've just seen, Bitcoin is the thing that outperforms. So yeah, it's been tough. I think a lot of people found it tough. We had the Bitcoin Greed and Fear Index hit 10 on Friday. Absolutely mental. A lot of that was kind of a bit of a macro sell-off as well. But it did feel as though there were calls from a lot of prominent people in crypto. We're going to 75K, we're going to 69K, we're going to 62K. Tom Lee said over the weekend as well. And then today's on saying it's going to go to 150. Like, prominent people said it was over. But this is kind of what crypto does to you. The volatility is a feature of the market. It's not a bug. All right. The idea that technical analysis can get absolutely destroyed on this sort of stuff is a feature. It's not a bug. Okay. So don't think the charts can save you. Don't think that because some talking heads, even us, predict what's going to happen, they're going to be right. It's an incredibly volatile market. And the only way to see a trend often is by zooming out. So we reclaimed that 88K level, which I think was very, very important. That was the second real point of support on the way down, and we smashed through it on the way down, and then we've reclaimed it now, and it feels like Bitcoin, as Marty says, is kind of comfortably now above 90K. I think that volatility shook out a lot of different people. It's interesting to see, as you said, Bitcoin kind of holding up slightly better, and there's a lot of commentary around the strategic reserve. My guess is that it still does point the most obvious picture for Bitcoin here, but I don't know if the bull market's back. Like, for me, we didn't just make a higher high or something like that. What we really just did is held what we really just did is held that chop area. So I'm still of the view we could chop for a bit here, even if I don't, as Marty says, I think the support level is relatively close to here. Like, I'm not of the view we're going to 120, 130K straight away. Like, I think we could chop.
Yeah, and what was also crazy is the timing of this announcement as well, happening on a Sunday. Like, literally, they waited for noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern time to launch this news while TradFi is sleeping. Markets are closed. Crypto's not closed. And I think there's some subliminal messaging there too. But there's a few other little items that we have to talk about that, again, may have flown under the radar. First of all, two little things here. Apparently, one of the things that rumored, allegedly, Trump is vying for, and by the way, now the audience hopefully understands why we have to talk about politics, is politics and crypto are inextricably linked. I've said for 1,000 times. But to remove capital gains tax on crypto trading and investing in the US. Wow. There's also some rumors about some type of credits for Bitcoin miners as well to secure the system. A lot of good stuff there. And then somebody, of course, did a 50x long on ETH and Bitcoin the day before this happened, made $200 million. They already cashed out of the ETH.
No, they made 12. They made 12.
Oh, only 12.
It was a $200 million position, but they made 12.
How do they only make 12 on a $200 million?
He took it off relatively early, actually. He took it
wow.
off relatively early. But it did look like peak crime.
Peak crime. So that's the first aspect of that. And then apparently this just broke. Tomorrow night will be big. The White House said that they'll be making a major investment announcement later today. I don't know if this is a crypto strategic business or Bitcoin reserve or crypto reserve or whatever, or it's the sovereign wealth fund for the US or
it's something
anything
else. James, it got announced just now. It's actually $100 million investment by one of the major Taiwanese chip makers.
Texas Semiconductor. Yep. I mean,
Yeah,
Taiwan Semiconductor.
Yeah, TSMC. So it's very similar to kind of what they announced recently with SoftBank. So TSMC, which famously is like one of the major companies at risk if China invades Taiwan, and they've been trying to move a lot of their production onshore to the US, or the US has been encouraging them to do that. They said they're going to make $100 billion investment in the US. So if you read through the lines, it also does point to the idea that China may be given a free reign of Taiwan relatively soon, in my opinion. But
yeah, James, some interesting factors along those lines, like top TradFi analysts also seem to take the weekend off. Like you saw this morning, you know, all of the sort of TradFi X accounts start posting about, oh, Trump announces crypto reserve. They're 23 hours behind.
I know, it's mad. Yeah,
no one in TradFi could have entered. It must be really frustrating.
Yeah, and this so many bizarre things. I spent, I think it was a year or two ago, I looked at kind of the impact on price of different hours that different markets are open around the world. And literally, you get different bumps and sell-offs at different times of the day, all dependent on different geographic regions. It's fascinating to see. And you could nearly time your trades around that too. But I need to refresh that and find out how it's changed. Because crypto is like, what happens when BlackRock launches their new Texas-based exchange, which is going to compete with NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange. And that'll probably be tokenized, and that'll probably be 24/7.
Well, I think when we talk about the strategic crypto reserve, we can touch on that. I have my thesis about what's going on, and the fact that the US, if they're going to put their treasuries and stable coins and real world assets on these public chains, they're going to have to protect them and therefore hold quite a large stake in those networks. And that's probably what they're doing.
The other crazy thing is when you think about what's happening, not just at the federal level in the US, but also at the state level, there is a little bit of a race for these states, where some of them are very large, to stack Bitcoin, which I think is not getting enough attention because, you know, they're not all going to fail. Some are definitely going to pass. And that's going to bring about a lot of demand. I think Texas said they're going to invest at least 500 million a year into Bitcoin, at least. And that doesn't include pensions and other stuff too. And then they're not going to sell it. It's going to be a hodl position. And you got Arizona, Utah, Montana, all racing ahead too. So that ties into the reserve thing. And then you got the federal level. You've got this strategic crypto reserve, Bitcoin, ETH, XRP, Sol, Cardano. And the question is, XRP, I mean, we know they got no moat, old technology, poor adoption, terrible tokenomics. But why is Ripple XRP in the mix? Maybe because of these images here. Shout out to Sanjay as well. Any thoughts on the cocktail that they're talking about? Does it even make sense? Like Cardano is dead. Cardano has 1/10 of the users it had in 2021 in the bull market.
You just have to understand, in the TradFi political world, it's all about playing golf with people, putting on suits and having meetings. It's about a corporation, you know, a brotherhood of industry executives. And, you know, Brad Gerlinghouse is he's good at that. It's a company. Yeah. Ripple is a company. I mean, my opinion has always been Ripple should IPO. I don't know what they're screwing around with XRP and just IPO and become a stock. It's a company. And so he's very good at schmoozing, always has been since the beginning. And, you know, the same can be said for Charles Hodgkinson. He's also sort of put on a suit, come out from his library basement, and he's starting to, you know, entertain business meetings and things. And those two guys are sort of, you know, they're taking meetings in Washington, and I think they've gaslit Donald Trump on what they really are. And the truth will be revealed when it comes to actually, you know, using them. And I think just like we did, like I've tried to use I've used every blockchain, and I constantly try and use them. And when you use them and it's not a pleasant user interface, it doesn't matter who you are. You're going to use something with a better interface and that's faster and cheaper. So I think it's just a matter of time before the truth is revealed. But yes, I agree. It is extremely interesting how they're mixing in black tie with governments and vice presidents, and very interesting. It's not very crypto, in my opinion. But anyway.
No, and you've opened some interesting points. I'll push over to Mando. Mando, when you who is influencing the decision makers here? Is it David Sachs? Is it Eric Trump? Is it these guys? I mean, who's driving the boat?
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly these. I mean, these are publicly being behind a number of very large donations for various different Senate, congressional races, and even the presidential race. So I think it's very, very clear that this is partly special interests. They are arguably US based, although actually none of these are based really in the US. They've got their foundations abroad, so maybe it's they're going to rehouse them. Look,
well, I mean, do you know the history of XRP? I mean, I was there in 2004. I don't know if you guys were, but XRP was actually created by Ryan Fugger. Ryan Fugger at the time was a very prominent developer. It was called Ripple Pay. And he's from Vancouver, Canada. So I don't even know why XRP is American. It's Canadian. It's the same as Dogecoin is Australian. The developer of Dogecoin is from Australia. So you see, there's a whole lot of political business narrative manipulation here. What is an American crypto? Those rules need to be defined. Does it mean the original creator launched the first validator in that jurisdiction? Does it mean that the headquarters are based in America? Does it mean the most validators are in it? What is it? What does that mean? And I think if you go back to most of these chains, very few are actually invented, initiated, launched in the USA. And XRP is definitely Canadian. Everyone knows that was there in that time. It's been spun as an American thing, but that was only much later, like in 2011, with Jed McCaleb. I remember that guy. So it's very interesting what's going on. But at the end of the day, I do believe that it all comes down to stablecoins. And I think that the Ripple stablecoin has, become quite a prominent stablecoin and will be used. And therefore, XRP, the network, needs to be protected. And that's why it's included in the reserve. And we'll see where it goes and what the allocations are. What I thought was more interesting, guys, was Grayscale's new smart contract fund was announced. Did you see that?
Yeah, complete trash.
Did you see the
allocation
proportion? Solana 31.3, the biggest by far.
Yep. No, actually, ETH is right behind it at 30%. But I actually did a video on that on Saturday because I got a bunch of questions about it. Should we get it? One accredited investor actually asked me, he said, should I drop a couple $100,000 into this thing? And I said, the allocations are absolutely insane. And, basically, if I was allocating to a fund like that, Sui, Sol, and Near should be 95% of the fund. That's it. The rest.
Also, XRP is not in there. See? XRP is not even considered a smart contract platform.
It's not a smart contract platform. That's the difference.
It's very interesting how it's even in the conversation. It's a different entity to me. It's a different kind of thing. It's not in the same thing. It's a banking computer system integration tool. I don't know why it's even in the conversation. Anyway, we'll get to that later.
Going back to the question though, what I thought about this reserve is I personally am. And this might sound a little bit bearish, but I'm not as bullish on the federal level for this reserve. I think it's even with an executive order. Remember, an executive order, you can't spend money. You have to go through Congress or Senate to be able to do that. So their ability to just to do things is very much hamstrung by what can pass through Congress and the Senate. And I think it's highly unlikely they'll be able to get altcoins through the Senate and Congress. At the same time, there are certain bits, even in the executive order, there's a bit of the Treasury called the ESF, which owns foreign exchange reserves. They could potentially own some of it, but I think they'd have to sell gold reserves to do that. And personally, I also think that's going to be incredibly difficult to do. So I actually think the most likely scenario here is you end up with kind of that watered down. They make sure they get the confiscated Bitcoin. Anything else they confiscate in the future, they'll get to keep. Maybe they'll do some mining. Maybe there'll be validators. But I actually think that some of their reserves here might come from like donations. Like the US government becomes a validator on this chain, or they work alongside miners in a certain jurisdiction, maybe alongside tax breaks, something like that. I actually think, and that's not all bearish, right? I actually think I actually think we'll actually get some from the Sovereign Wealth Fund, potentially down the line, and maybe the Sovereign Wealth Fund, but I think that's more a longer term process. Like maybe they'll manage to raise some debt against some assets or something like that, and buy some.
But Mando, don't you think if the US prints, puts $1 trillion of treasury-backed stable coins onto a network, a proof of stake network, that they would want to protect that network? It's now holding the dollars. This is digital dollars on chain. So
I think there's almost a very minimal chance that the Fed ever prints money to buy any of these altcoins. Very, very low chance.
No, but they're treasury.
But at the same time, I think the states could buy a lot. This is why I'm more bullish on the states. Like, I actually think the states, as you saw, Texas, it went through both of their houses very quickly, and they can now give. They can now use some of their treasury to buy Bitcoin. So I think on the state level, we may see more buying, actual outright buying, than on the federal level. And the other thing, I think this starts the global FOMO. So like, even if, which there has been some FUD today, like, oh, it's only going to be Bitcoin, or how can they even buy it? I actually think some of those are valid, but you're kind of missing the second order impacts in that I think a lot of state-linked enterprises or states themselves, as well as globally, like if Russia now decides, hey, the US is making Bitcoin a global reserve, we need to own some, they can do it like that. If the UAE wants to do that, they can do it like that. If China wants to work alongside a bunch of miners and do it, they can do it like that. So the US is kind of hamstrung by the idea that it has 3 different centers of governmental power, right? And it's going to be difficult for them still to get through that. But on the state level, it's going through a lot easier in some of the states. And I think on other countries, you're going to see that FOMO. So yes, there's some FUD that this might not happen as people expect it to, but I still think it's going to be very bullish.
Yeah, I agree with Mando that probably the states will be the first to buy and probably the first to activate. I think the Feds have the 200,000 Bitcoin seized already, ready to go. So there's less pressure for them to actually go and buy. But I think there will be a race for the states, and it looks like it's going to be Arizona probably first. And that should involve buying. But once again, guys, this will probably be OTC buying. It won't affect the market like we hope. It'll take a little time to seep through. But still, I believe that the Treasury, if they're issuing US Treasury bill-backed stablecoins onto Ethereum, Solana, Sui, I mean, there's only a few of them that have USDC, etc., they're going to want to protect that stake. They can't have Binance be, running the largest validator of a network housing the US dollar. So I think there will be initiatives for them to start to accumulate stake in order to at least be part of the conversation in governance of these networks if they're going to be outsourced CBDC, which is what they really
agree with
are.
that.
Right?
I agree that we could see them becoming validators on networks, but very similar to how like Google's a validator on certain networks and hasn't ever bought any of the coins, right? They get donated as part of like the treasury funds of these big chains. They go like, hey, like Solana gave Google some gave Google some Solana to be a validator, and that looks good for Solana. If the US government is a validator on any of these networks, I think it's also going to be positive. So I think you're going to see positive developments on the federal level, but not like where that money comes from is where it gets difficult. Whereas on the state level and for other governments, I think it's much easier.
Yeah,
no, I agree with you.
And there's other news too. There's a big event happening on the 7th, so-called first ever crypto summit at the White House on March 7th, which is 4 days away this week. And they'll be talking about a whole bunch of stuff. Do you think anything will fall out of this, or is it just a meet and greet chat up session?
I think Trump will announce what he put on Truth Social. I think he'll announce those 2 things. Whether he gives more detail, I don't think, but he'll at least announce them, I think.
Mando, anything interesting falling out of this?
Yeah, I think you'll probably see the who's who of US crypto at this event. Who wants to vie to be part of that reserve. I think it will be largely it's largely been pre-announced at this stage.
Yep. All right. We're at a big crossing roads as well right now, because every indicator I just got the ISM numbers coming in right here, and they are desperate. That's the US manufacturing numbers. European production, etc., is horrible. China is weak. We'll talk about China and their money printing in a second. But we have this Doge thing happening in the US. We got this tariff stuff happening. We've got major car makers around the planet redirecting resources out of places like Mexico and Canada to either the US or India or other places. So there's a couple of things happening. Austerity measures, cutting spending, etc., through Doge is definitely going to increase unemployment, at least in very specific areas like Washington, D.C. We're already seeing those numbers spike. And tariffs could also raise the cost of everything for everybody, taking more money out of the system, which could impact crypto. Do you think the concerns around macro, around austerity measures and tariffs could ding us for a while? Or do you think like Bitcoin is truly becoming risk off? Because if you look at gold, it keeps going up despite all of this bad macro news, which is exactly what gold is designed to do. But at what point, Mando, do you think Bitcoin will become true gold 2.0 as a risk off asset? Or does it take state treasuries, game theory to make this happen?
I think you're already seeing it, right? Like there's been a general more risk-off mood for stocks for the last 2 months, and Bitcoin dominance has gone up to like 62%. And you can say part of that is what we just spoke about, but part of that is just Bitcoin is seen as more of a defensive asset. A lot of the more smart contract stuff is seen more like tech, and if the NASDAQ goes down, 4% in a month, then it's going to be weak. I think this macro wobble is kind of there, although I think the seeds of the recovery are kind of also there too. We're starting to see inflation drop off pretty substantially, and it kind of points towards the Fed probably being too defensive or too hawkish so far this year. So I think we'll end up seeing is still like 3, maybe even 4 rate cuts this year. But I think I bank on 3, and that was not what was thought about probably a few weeks ago. So I think we're starting to see a dovish pivot in monetary policy. The idea that global liquidity is probably going to go higher. We'll see a pivot away from quantitative tightening and a pivot to lower interest rates. So I think that's going to be with us. Tech stocks are obviously not having the best period. I think there's a little bit of like questions about some of the valuations just after the DeepSeek stuff, and then kind of the slowdown in the US. I think that where you stand on the Doge impact is kind of, do you think it's an efficiency drive, or do you think it's an austerity drive? And it's very clear there's a lot of bloat. Yes, there are maybe fewer jobs in Washington, but like they were maybe not productive jobs. So like it's very difficult to work out. It's more like a reduction in money supply there rather than anything. I think the Doge is a good thing, even if it leads to like short-term pain. I think it's good to kind of focus on efficiency on the fiscal level, and it's clearly been kind of insane, like the amount of overspending that's been going on, or like not even tracking where the spending is going. So it's waste. So I think there will be some short-term pain around that, which might affect the jobs market. But then we're at such rates are still at 4.5%. We're still in quantitative tightening. Like there's a lot of room for monetary policy to do a big swing here and help the market, in my opinion.
In fact, speaking of that, this one here, we're kind of bouncing a bit around the place, but this is important because here you can see many believe China is about to print like mad. I know we all watched global liquidity, but China definitely needs to boost their economy. It's slowing down. People aren't buying houses like before. There was rumors about Xi having a behind closed door conference about Bitcoin Reserve, maybe game theory, maybe fake news. I don't know. But they have to keep their economy growing at 5%. In order to do that, they have to print like mad, and they don't even care if they devalue the yuan. And then you got Europe. They've got to expand their military big time if the US threatens to pull out of NATO. And then other places around the world have huge debt. So rates need to come down. but the whole world is built on a house of debt. It's a house of cards ready to fall down unless there's a ton of stimulus coming. So, Marty, I know you look at liquidity. I don't know if you look at China.
Yeah, I have a couple of takes on all of these things. I mean, first of all, I don't think that Bitcoin will make the move to 125 personally until they remove these offshore unregulated exchanges. I think these casinos running against crypto, will always create this volatility to support the casino, and that's not going to cut it if the US states or feds or China enter into these asset classes. So I think since early January, we've seen the initial stages of a strategy to try and take away their dominance or / close them. We know Binance sold all its reserves off. This Bybit thing, I still don't believe it's a hack. I think the writing's on the wall. I think that there's an initiative to shut down offshore unregulated crypto exchanges and bring them onshore. I think crypto, also at the same time, you see all this regulatory pressure to create new lightweight ETF guidelines to make any crypto be able to be placed in an ETF. I think the NASDAQ, the New York Stock Exchange, the CME, the Texas Exchange, and Coinbase and other onshore exchanges will take over the dominance. I think Binance's writing is on the wall. That, in my opinion, is true, and I've also got evidence to support that. I've got people saying Bitcoin will not break out until that happens, or until the states enter. So there is a suppression game going on to allow, congressional activity to get to a point where they can actually start to enter Bitcoin at these levels. So that's one thing. It shouldn't scare people. It's great. In my opinion, it's the greatest thing ever. Go ahead.
Good question just popped in. How can you shut down Binance? It's offshore.
Political pressure, financial pressure, the same way they did before. Remember, the DOJ went after Binance, but that was under the Biden administration. I think a lot of that under Kash Patel will come out, and we'll see that the decision-making in that was extremely lenient, because at that point, they didn't want crypto to be seen as a positive. They wanted crypto to be seen as a bad thing. They used that as a narrative to make crypto bad. I think at the end of the day, Binance got off real easy, and that 4.3 billion, we paid it. We paid it. They dumped their crypto. We paid it. So the government took the money from retail again. We paid that fine, not Binance. So be very clear on that. I think that's all going to change now with this new crypto administration, this task force. I think we'll look into that DOJ ruling and the investigation, and we'll see that they know very well there's illegal manipulation of crypto. Everyone knows it. I mean, I publish it every day. It's there on chain. I don't think it's a joke. Everybody else is understanding that as well. That needs to be removed or contained before crypto goes to the moon, as they say. But then, I mean, does that make any sense to you guys? I know it's frightening. A lot of people get scared when I talk about Binance potentially getting either bought or consumed or pushed out or regulated. Binance may become regulated.
Yeah. Smack on the wrist.
At the end of the day, the manipulation is fierce. Like they'll take back 50% of any move that crypto does. Firstly, they have a $60 billion a day casino running against crypto. Their interests lie in profits. They're making a ton of money. So that's my take on that.
Show me the incentive, as Charlie Munger used to say, or as Warren Buffett. Let's talk a little wrap up crypto and Bitcoin before we get into crypto. This was interesting. We had a record 8 days of outflows from the ETF, which had a huge impact. A lot of dumpage happened. And then all of a sudden on Friday, continued $250 million dump from BlackRock, which is very unusual. They were big during the whole first year of ETFs. BlackRock were steady Eddie, taking money in all the time. And then they have this new announcement we'll get to in a second. But this is incredible here. You've got ARK and Fidelity go in big on Friday. 8 negative days, record 8 days, and these two come in big. Do you think possibly they had an inkling as to what was going to happen? Or no?
Maybe. I mean, these are ETFs, so it's difficult to work out like which is internal funds versus external funds, like retail buying essentially. I think the ETF numbers, in the same way that like everyone said they were being inflated on the way up, they're also being exaggerated on the way down. And that's purely because of the basis trades, right? This is the trade where you go long the ETF and you go short futures. Interestingly, over the last month or so, you kind of can get negative funding on many days for Bitcoin alongside a lot of other majors. And what you've seen is a massive unwind of those trades. So those trades are only, you may not understand what I'm talking about, but those trades only make sense when funding for perps is positive and it moved negative. Therefore, you get an unwinding of these trades. You get people, those hedge funds that were kind of delta neutral come in and sell their Bitcoin ETF holding. And that was a huge bit. That like, for example, Millennium's a massive holder of Bitcoin.
The biggest.
That's what they do.
Yep.
They're not sitting there owning that. They do have a delta neutral, or a large bit of it is delta neutral. So a lot of the hedge funds that were doing that trade will be reducing their positions on the back of that. And net, that doesn't really do much, because all they do is they sell the ETF and then they buy the futures back, and net should cause a limited impact. But yeah, just be aware that don't get too scared about outflow figures like that.
Marty, can you pull up the funding rates right now for Bitcoin and share? But the reason what's interesting here is BlackRock's Bitcoin portfolio addition to their model portfolio, which is a $150 billion fund run by Aladdin, etc., now has a 1.1 to 2% allocation into it. And this might sound like a nothing burger, but a huge amount of the money that BlackRock runs on behalf of clients, they basically just do what BlackRock says. And over like 12 or 13% of all their 1.2 trillion is in this portfolio. Mando, this is profound. And what do you think of this news?
Yeah, it's massive. These are this is one of the biggest bits of news for the week, but no one really would have noticed it. Like, this probably leads to more buying than most of the states over a long period, right? This is their flagship portfolio. This will be put into tons of other strategies that they do. BlackRock has a number of passive and active funds. This will be part of a lot of their funds. It will be part of a lot of other asset managers' funds. Like, if anyone's managing your money, wealth management, like, they'll look at this sort of as a base level of fund to put money into. So when people spoke about last summer, we're starting to see wealth managers move. This is what it takes. This is how long it takes. Like, they are oil tankers. So the idea that that Bitcoin would be accepted as an asset over time and have to pass due diligence, it's this sort of stuff. It takes months, and then it gets accepted to one of these model portfolios. And we'll probably see the same from all the other ETF issuers, that they'll start to get put into model portfolios. You'll start to see more wealth managers able to look at it, able to own it. So the wealth management industry, and in general the asset management industry, can be a slow-moving beast, but this is a very big bit of information in my opinion.
Exactly. I pulled up the fund. Sorry, Marty. No, I pulled up the funding. The funding rates have flipped positive again for Bitcoin, with the exception
look at the 7-day. Just click from the 7-day to the 1-day. You'll see they were all red on the 7-day. You click that 7-day there.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they've turned green on the 1-day. So yeah, there's been a shift.
So that should mean that the ETF money flow returns once again, if this pattern happens. So yeah, let's get into some of the crypto news. Sol unlock. The world was terrified about this for 6 months. I was sick to the teeth of hearing about it. Marty, tell us about this nothing burger.
Yeah, I watched the whole thing.
Going to dump.
I actually did my first subscriber ever sort of alpha session, and subscribers watched me do the analysis. I watched the Alameda original wallets. I watched the unlock happen. I watched it go into intermediate wallets and then dispersed to the new buyers from the auction. All went very smoothly. None of them have sold. Most of them restaked it into their validators. So it's an absolute nothing burger, as we said.
Yeah.
If anything, it's bullish.
Yeah. Now, we do have a little bit of a reversal of the pump over the weekend. ETH is back to where it was on Friday, by the way. Solana's retracing, Bitcoin's retracing. With the market cap added $1/3 of $1 trillion in 6 hours. The total crypto market cap, half of that has already been given back. So that's a bit of a concern. But the unlock itself, as we thought about, would be a nothing burger. But this statistic is kind of interesting from Solana News. For 18 straight months, Solana has processed 90% of all on-chain activity. I mean, this is typical of traditional markets where the winner takes most. But how extreme is this? Mando, do you think this is something that's overlooked as well?
Yeah, I mean, 2024 was the year of Solana for sure. For the and the back half of 2023 as well. Like it just dominated DEX volumes, absolutely destroyed it. It started to outpace Ethereum plus all its L2s combined. Now you have to be honest and say that over the last month that has decreased a lot. Solana volumes are back down to kind of where they were in October, November. Part of that is the deflation of all the meme coin stuff, just generally more bearish sentiment throughout crypto, more degen activity, which Solana was really king of for a long time. But Solana still is just a behemoth of a chain. It has amazing apps. It has the best wallet, the best UI UX, speed, all this sort of stuff. It's in a really, really strong position. I think part of this retracement, Solana had that support level around 175, 180, which it held for quite a while, and we kind of touched that level, and we kind of rejected off it. So I do think we're probably going to chop here a little bit. But Solana still feels like an obvious trade out of the majors. I do think that if I go through the logic of what I just said, where I think the states and the other countries actually lead a lot of the buying, I don't think they're buying altcoins. No. Like I don't think Texas is buying ADA or XRP. So there's something to be said there. That, like, if you actually follow it through, yeah, they might be included at a federal level, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the UAE is going to go out and buy them. What it means is UAE is going to buy Bitcoin. So I do think it does make sense, even that Bitcoin dominance rises, even if there are other assets included in this reserve.
Yeah, well stated. Marty, what happens when Firedancer launches? Well, it's tiptoeing into the market now.
I mean, I think these are all valid points. And I mean, I'm going back to my initial thesis that, meme coins were a great liveness test. I've been saying that for a year. People don't really understand what it means. I mean, when you build software, testing is the most important and the hardest thing to do. You can test all you want in a lab, in your office, in your R&D department, with your test servers and your test users. But there is no test like a real world test, a liveness test. Put it into production, get real users all around the world on the actual public internet with all its inefficiencies, using the thing, and you'll really find the problems. And I think meme coins have always, I mean, it started with Ethereum. Ethereum used meme coins for its initial testing before it scaled to 2 validators. Then Binance Chain did it back in the day. It's just part of the way it works in this domain. And so meme coins were a terrific test of Solana, and we found at least 3 bottlenecks which have been fixed based on the meme coin volume and the meme coin users. And I think it was a wonderful test. I give it a round of applause. But you must understand the nature of the investors. First of all, I don't think meme coins are investment, but the nature of the people buying the assets in meme coins is different from the nature of the people buying actual investments. If the tokens actually represented things of value, businesses, companies, real-world assets, the nature of the holder will be different. They wouldn't be a paper-handed gambler looking to exit any pump. And the assets will be different. They're not things with no utility that mean nothing. They'll be actual companies with employees and profit and boards. And with the regulation coming, all that's happening is it's going to go stable coins, real world assets, and then finally, legal tender, and then we'll see a massive ICO event where companies can start to tokenize their equity. And you'll get a whole different type of holder and a whole different type of asset. And I think this meme coin testing was to test the software. Remember, the software has now been tested to handle scale. They found one major problem, and that is the public internet cannot handle more than 1,500 transactions per second reliably. And so 00, you see, has been instantly popped up a project to go and fix that problem and to create a dedicated private network for high-speed layer ones. But once we get these regulations and the quality of the assets increases, so it's not meme coins getting launched, it's Home Depot token, Netflix token, actual brand tokens through proper companies with boards and regulation. And the investors are not degens. They're TradFi investors that understand you hold an investment to maturity. You don't just dump it on day one. Yeah. The software hasn't changed. The software is ready. And Solana is now ready to take that on. And I think that is well understood in the government. It's well understood in TradFi. A lot of people have front-run that. And it's now just a matter of the regulations happening. And we'll watch that happen over the next few months. I think it's accelerated like you have no idea. I think stablecoin regulation will hit the Senate floor for vote. It might not pass the first time, maybe not the second time. But when it does, all institutions globally can apply to issue US Treasury-backed stablecoins. That's talking about banks, Bank of America stablecoin, Wells Fargo stablecoin, companies, Tesla stablecoin.
PayPal already has one.
Taylor Swift can come out with their own stablecoin. PayPal, there's going to be thousands of stablecoins on these networks. Okay, for branding, for rewarding, it's going to be a revolution. And then you'll get real-world assets. You'll get treasuries. You'll get bonds, company bonds. Then you'll get equity. You'll get company equity tokenized. Everything will be tokenized. Larry Flint has already said it. And the networks that can perform and handle the volume of interaction, trade, and markets with these tokens will win. And
never heard him called Larry Flint.
And that's why Solana's mentioned. That's why Solana's in the strategic crypto fund. It's literally going to run the new American marketplace.
It is, and there's only one chain that can run it. There's only one chain that can run it. That's the most important thing, and that was the robustification is the term I use for how it has been hardened, like forged, like steel, and one of those things where they used to harden the swords in the day. But Mando, this news, SEC clarifies meme coins are not securities. Did this take you aback? I think it probably did.
No, honestly, it didn't. I think the SEC has basically said how can we regulate something when there are 10,000 coins a day? Like it's how can anyone? So they basically washed their hands of it and said, look, you do you. If you want to invest in these, they will all go to zero, but you can lose money at your own will and all this sort of stuff. So I think what they've basically said is we're not going to save you. What they will save. What they did come out and say, though, at the same time, is if they're called meme coins, but actually they're utility coins, they'll look at them, and if there's market manipulation at the same time, then they will. How they'll enforce that, I think they've basically said, I think they're not going to be able to do it. So I think meme coins are going to remain. They're going to remain with us. They're going to remain the Wild West. They're going to see huge run-ups. You're going to see crazy moves in some of them, and at the same time, it's just is what it is. It's internet culture. They go up, down, boom, bust. I'm still a big lover of that bit of the market. But
they also hinted it would be kind of like commodity-like, which means it would fall under the jurisdiction of the CFTC, or just under the jurisdiction of nobody. Keep it the Wild West. I think
under the jurisdiction of nobody. They actually said that they were going to beat. They're like trading cards.
Yeah,
so they basically are saying we're not going to be involved. No one will be involved.
Yeah, I think there'll be no regulatory body of meme coins, but they'll fall under the Department of Justice with regards to fraud. So anyone thinking that they can scam people, that's over. They're going to come after. They're going to make an example of one of these influencers, Barstool type guy. I don't know who.
Yeah. But what's the update on the Hex guy? Where's Marty? What's the Hex guy's name? Where is he? Where's he hiding out? Yeah, he's wanted.
He got out.
Yeah,
he got cleared. He got cleared on Friday.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Anyway, this one is huge news. XRP temporarily did flip Ethereum in terms of fully diluted market cap, if I'm not mistaken. It's kind of fallen back a little bit. That's just incredible. Like, you can say what you want about Ethereum, but it does a billion times more stuff than XRP. It was bonkers time. And then the ETH leadership is trying to as I call it, change the wings on the plane. I remember, I think it was early 2024, Vitalik, much respect to Vitalik Buterin, but he came and said, we're not going to focus on scaling the core. We're going to keep it at 15 TPS, but we're going to scale through the L2s. And then the L2s, like base, cannibalize the mothership like crazy. Now they're trying to figure out new leadership and a new way to change the wings on the plane. Marty, I'll give this one to you first. As a technologist, can you change the wings on the plane? Can you make the layer 1 scale?
I mean, look, I think I've always said it over 2 years ago. I think Ethereum should have started rewriting the L1 with newer technology and new understanding, new architectures. That's what I would have done if I. I'm not looking for a job, but if I was. And I think they've left it too late. They've pushed it to the hands of the L2s, which have just built very sophisticated sequences. There are other EVMs which have written from scratch, like this Taraxa TARA token, which I've now made a small position in, which have rewritten EVM from scratch with new technology, and I really like it. I think Ethereum is late to the boat. Their L1 would need to be rewritten from scratch. They've band-aided it all they can, but the problem is Solidity. Solidity, their programming language, is riddled with errors. You can ask anyone. Ask the CTO of Cardano, the CTO of Sui, anyone in Solana Technical. They'll tell you, we've always known Solidity is a academic programming language. It's not type safe. It allows reentrancy. And all of these issues come from reentrancy. If you don't understand what reentrancy means, it means you can start a smart contract that's moving money between accounts or whatever. And then reentrancy means that smart contract can call another smart contract, which doesn't wait for the smart contract to end. So when the smart contract gets signatures and approvals from Bybit to move assets, before it ends, this other one can change the figures, the values, the accounts, the wallets. That's what keeps happening in the Ethereum environment. These exploits come from that one basic issue, which needs to be rewritten. You can't band-aid it. So Ethereum is a little bit late. Now, they've proposed a roadmap to do what I'm saying, but like Ethereum, you know, they're seen as the Europe of crypto, very slow, rigorous. It's looking at 2029 to 2030 when they will have a solution to these problems. But by then, I think the wave is gone. The Lindy effect is over. So I think I'm looking at other EVM makers to come in and capture the EVM market. Personally, I don't think Ethereum can do it. It's just too late. I think that their dominance needs to come down to the 6 to 8% level. I called 10%. We're now at 9.8. So I was 100% right there. It dropped from 20 to 10. I think it's going to go to 6 to 8. XRP's at 5. I think it'll settle at around 5 to 6. XRP, look, guys, I was there in the beginning. I know the XRP people. XRP was also very academic in the beginning, and their initial claim was to create a payment system to compete with Bitcoin. So that's why you see a lot of original OG XRP investors pumping the price. It was seen as a competitor to Bitcoin, but it's not, okay? It's not very well made. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions, and this will, over the next 12 months, will become clear. But at the end of the day, this is a technology game. We're technology investors, and the best technology will win. And I think the best technology is Solana and Sui.
And like everything else in the world, winner takes most, like the Amazons, like the Googles, etc. However, Google is actually being disrupted right now by AI and search. Any quick thoughts on this one, Mando, regarding ETH and XRP and these old chains that have like no adoption and they're being trounced by some new chain that is only trading at 25% of the market cap of Ethereum? Something is off.
Yeah, I don't know, because I would have said that, like what you said, James, that, you know, when it takes most. And I think that is true to a certain extent, but then XRP is also 2x the value of Solana, and ADA is at 50 billion or 40 billion now, whatever. Like, there's something to be said in crypto, which is like, doesn't make that much sense to me, but these coins often like become meme coins. Like, your favorite Uber driver's coin is probably XRP and ADA, right? Like they've got this like meme coin, YouTube, TikTok vibe to them. So I don't know. I'm never going to call a chain dead again. They're dead in terms of the tech, in my opinion, but they're not. They're often.
I mean, At the end of the day, I think what we're always talking about I have been for a long time, is that crypto is young. It was placed in one asset class, crypto. That's like saying every company on the stock exchange that uses a database is the same. That's all they do. Crypto is just a database. So all of these different databases and companies that use the database, they're not the same. They're completely different enterprises. XRP is a completely different thing to Solana. It serves a different purpose. The investors are different. XRP is seen as a back office banking rails, to replace FedNow or interbanking systems or ACH. Same as Ethereum now. Solana is a completely different thing. It's going to handle stable coins when you pay for coffee. These are totally different asset classes. They need to be separated. We need to have meme coins, utility coins, banking coins, equity coins, and regulate them differently and put them on different markets, trade them differently. Their intrinsic value is different. Their use case is different. Their fundamentals are different. There you go. Yeah. And that's what I think David Sachs and the crypto task force are working on. Like Micah in Europe did that. Categorized cryptos. They're all different. And that's what we're seeing starting in.
And also never underestimate the power of culture and community and people staking, getting locked in. Like things like staking pools on Cardano have people sucked into Cardano for long periods of time. They don't even know how to get out. And somebody's posted in the comments here. They said, it's not all about speed. No, it's not. It's all about speed and cost and user experience. That drives users. So like take Amazon, for example. Amazon was successful because they delivered stuff within 2 days, okay? And reliably, never missed. 99 times out of 100, you get it in 2 days. Nobody else could compete with that. Everybody tried, even the Walmarts of the world. So yes, it's about speed and efficiency and user experience. That's it. We've got a little bit of macro stuff before we wrap. We've covered that. It's quite... This one is interesting. Trufulation, I think, Mando, you picked up on this. Trufulation now is 1.44%. You can see it dropped off a cliff, and that's because people aren't spending. Part of the reason for this is people blow everything they have for Christmas. January, it's dead. Nobody has any money left to spend, especially now in the US, and that's a big part of the driver for this one. However, I do believe core matters, the core PCE, which pulls out all the noise, all the volatility of other assets. It looks at the actual goods and services purchased by consumers, excluding food and energy, and owner's equivalent rent and crap like that. And that, I think, is a big part of it. But you want to talk about how this ties into this? The Fed. This is, a lot of people are fed up with the Fed. They think it's absurd. They have 400 PhDs who literally must do nothing because AI can do their job, or Mando, you could do their job in a heartbeat. But the other thing that's very interesting from the Atlas Society is the Fed is literally all Democrats in terms of funding, how they vote, etc. It's not a neutral organization. So, long-winded way of asking, the Fed, do we need it? Interest rates, they're too high. The deficits are too high. The debt is too high and growing. Doge will not solve the debt problem. What do you think of all this? Could they kill the Fed?
I don't think they can kill. I don't think they will kill the Fed. If that's what the question is, I think the Fed has too much entrenched power in the US. Definitely, I don't think the executive branch could do it. It would require like Congress and Senate and everyone to decide that need to change. I think it's a very difficult thing to do, honestly. And that's not that I'm like super bullish on the Fed or anything like that. I just think the idea of like reducing their power is quite a difficult thing to do. There's actually a lot of like safeguards in place between the executive branch and the Fed. So do I think that the US moving away from a gold standard has been that incredible? It's difficult because at the one stage we talk about yeah, the US has got really high debt, and so have all these countries, and that's capitalism, like credit. Credit is what drives capitalism. At the same time, we've probably been through 8 decades now of peace and some of the biggest technological innovations that we've ever seen. So I do think credit and capitalism kind of go hand in hand. I don't see a reversal of that, at least not with this administration.
Marty,
I have a totally other, contrarian attitude. I think I'd say 80 to 90% chance the Fed is demolished by Donald Trump. Just remember the origins of the Fed, right? The Fed was created in 1913 by Wilson, Woodrow Wilson. Why? To create a centralized banking system. Why? Because banking in that time was decentralized. Does that ring any bells?
Yep.
It's a 100-year cycle, guys. We're going back to decentralized banking. The Fed was just the cornerstone of centralized banking, which was brought into place from the 1907 panic, the stock market crash of 1907. As a reaction to that, it's lasted too long. It doesn't work. It serves no purpose. They make 6% interest on every transaction. They're just a company that is been exploiting, I would say, for 100 years, and they will be demolished. Now, the whole question is, can Donald Trump fire Jerome Powell? And, we talk about that at length. And there is a stipulation where he can fire him for cause. So he can't directly fire him, but he can find cause. And I think cause is being developed. That case has been developed. I think the Fed will go. There'll be decentralized banking through crypto. Any issuer will be able to issue their own money based on their own collateral, and we'll go back to the original system of decentralized banking. That's my opinion. We'll see over the course of the shows whether I'm right or wrong, but that's my thesis. I think the Fed is done.
Either way, they don't need 400 PhDs. They need maybe one or two. No. And they're very well paid.
They're most inefficient of all of the things. The only thing is that Fed is the only thing that's not connected to the government. And why did they do that? You've got to ask yourself the question. Why did they make it private in Jekyll Island? Well, because of this reason.
Precisely. Exactly. You know your history, young man. Well done.
Oh, yeah, I studied history. I find it very interesting. The origination of the Fed is one of the most interesting stories, actually. It includes the Titanic. It includes, the Rothschilds, the creation of the SEC, the Securities Act. We've been talking about securities for years. So why the hell are we even talking about securities in the notion of digital assets? Because of the stupid 1934 laws that were created.
And just so people know as well, when you dig into history of money and history of governments, a lot of people think all the fraud and abuse just happened over the last 4 years. No, it's happened for the last 250 years. And it happens all over the world in every economy. All your government officials, well, most of them are corrupt. So I don't care what country you're in.
Well, I'm going to drop some alpha. In 1907, the stock market crash was not created by the public. The narrative was the public was irresponsible, just like Elizabeth Warren saying crypto is irresponsible. It was J.P. Morgan that instigated that crash.
Yeah, so we could buy everything.
They made it crash with market makers. Does that ring any bells? Yep. There you go.
Well, we'll try to keep this to an hour, everybody. Links for Marty and, of course, Mando are below. CTO will be back next week. Any final thoughts? We are retracing. Bitcoin is at, where are we now? 90. SO is at literally $90,000, which is a far cry from where it was a few days ago, but down from where it was yesterday. Thoughts for the week ahead? Are things going to settle in? Are we going to chop solidate for a while, Mando?
I think we had a nice little pump from the last show, right? We said that we were super bullish, and that things were looking oversold. We had that bounce. It's difficult to say. I do think Bitcoin probably looks the strongest here. Just kind of, if I follow the logic of what I said before, I would be unsurprised if we chop for the next week. Like, I don't think macro is going to take us below 88K though. I think I very much believe that. Like, I think we might chop, but I would be buyer at 88K.
Yeah, awesome. Marty, thoughts for the week ahead?
I think this Friday thing is extremely bullish. I think a lot of news will come out of that, which will run into the weekend. I think the flush of Bitcoin is done. They took exactly 50% on the daily, which is what market makers do. It was all instigated by Binance. I have every transaction to prove it. They sent over 500 Bitcoin and dumped it on the market. It's straight back up to 90. I think now we follow gold. We lag behind gold, and we'll move up to the next Fibonacci, which on Bitcoin is 115. Whether it'll be next week, I'm not sure. Maybe the week after, around there. But I think we run to 115 and then to 125, which is the top of the cup and handle we've been following now for over a year. Following gold, which is bullish flag, is breaking out straight to its target of 3,000. Yeah, just don't underestimate this meeting on Friday, guys.
This is the Friday meeting. Yep.
Yeah, this Friday is a massive thing. There's going to be a lot of front running, a lot of seller news, but leading into the weekend, which has primarily been quite bearish lately, right? But weekends have been quite bearish for 4 to 5 weekends in a row. It's been selling off. This Sunday was the first time we've seen a positive impulse on a weekend. I think that's a structure change, and I think now we'll see a couple of bullish weekends. So I think next weekend we might make a good run after this Friday meeting. That's my thought.
Yeah, my thought is the Friday meeting is very important. That's the one I just showed you. That's the White House crypto event. Typically, what will happen is a run up into that meeting, and then it'll be a nothing burger and then sell off after it. Who knows? That's probably what's going to happen. Either way, it's pretty certain we had a historically bad Feb. When I look at seasonality, and it's rare in this stage of the bull that Feb is bad, which means March will be good. So that's a little bit of dose of hopium for the day. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you so much, Mando, Marty. Don't forget their links are below, and we're being viewed on all our channels, so you probably know us all anyway. Thank you, team. We got some fireworks down there at the bottom.
Yeah,
awesome.
If you put your thumbs up, you get fireworks.
Thank you.
Nice.
I think I got mine turned off.
Mando, I love you guys. James.
Thank you,
awesome
Sean
work.
Donnelly and TND
DCA
Tesla.
will be back next week.
Yep.
Yeah, hold in there, guys. Don't get shaken out. This is the time to buy, not the time to sell. All watch global liquidity, especially China, and this Friday meeting. Have a good week.
And Tom Lee says 150K this year. So let's do it. Go, Tom Lee. Good night, everybody. Good morning.
Bye, guys.
Good evening. Bye.